When you first launch Premiere Pro, one of the things you'll need to do is create a new project. Think of this as the canvas that's going to hold all of the elements. Just as Photoshop has layers, the canvas or Premiere Pro project will hold lots of different pieces. We'll start to build things and assemble it. But it's a bit more than just the finished sequence. Premiere will also have bins to organize your material in projects. So the project file itself is really a container that holds many different things. When you launch Premiere Pro, you'll be presented with the welcome screen. What you'll want to do is click the New Project button, and a dialog box will come up. Now, I've already got some projects set up for you to work with, but you'll go through these steps. The first thing you'll do is assign a name. So you might give this the name of the production, Jason Massey Promo. You then need to decide where that's going to be stored. For now, since this is just for practice, save it to your desktop. Next, go through the settings. We're going to measure our video using timecode. Timecode is a unique number that's assigned to a point in time in a project, and it's what's typically used with video. Think of it as a reference number for each frame of video. Then we can also use audio, and this is typically done in audio samples. You will see a more precise millisecond, and under timecode, the ability to use frames or feet if this was a film-based project. For the capture format, don't really worry about this. This is not something that you rely upon heavily, but if you were using a dedicated capture device, Premiere Pro would show you additional options there. Next, you'll see other tabs. Scratch disk is where your system is going to store additional files. This allows you to choose where you capture things, such as render files or previews. Usually, this is set to same as project, which is why if you were doing a real project, you would save it into the Common Media folder. So instead of saving it to your desktop, you would use the Common Media folder you learned about earlier and navigate to the Project Files folder. This way, your media and project files were backed up on your high-performance drive. The last tab is for ingest, and this is dealing if you're going to be moving material off of memory cards, but we've already talked about moving the material using the operating system as opposed to Premiere Pro's ingest settings. That's a more advanced option for professional-based cameras. When you're all set, you'll click the OK button, and the new project is created. We can expand this so it fills the frame, but you are presented with a blank canvas that's ready for work. Let's continue to practice with this sample project. A little bit later, I'll have you open up a snapshot project, so just do your best to follow along. One of the first things we need to do is bring media into our project. To make this a bit easier, I could switch to the assembly workspace, and you'll see that the user interface changes a bit. Feel free to choose Window, Workspace, Assembly, and then Reset to Saved Layout if necessary. Now you go to the Media browser to access your material, and simply navigate to the Exercise File folder. I'll navigate to this directly, and go to my Common Media folder, and at this time, I'm ready to bring in my capture scratch and my audio sources. So with a right click on that folder, I could choose Import. The folder is scanned and added. Let's go back here to the audio sources and right click and choose Import. Now you might be wondering, where did that go? Well, it was tucked inside of this folder because that was highlighted when I chose Import. But I can drag that back out very easily and place it at its own level. You'll see inside that the necessary pieces have come in. There's our B-roll, the multi-camera clips, and the interview. If you need to, you can also click on these columns to adjust their width in case any names are cut off. But as you see now, the material has been imported into our project. When you import a folder into Premiere Pro, that folder is recreated inside your project, but it's really a virtual organization. For example, when I imported the audio in, it put it inside the video folder, but nothing changed on my drive. This first reality inside the application is not really directly tied to the hard drive. It will recreate the folders that it encounters during an import, but after that, everything else is virtual. So folders take on a different name, and it's bins. It goes back to the days of film when the film was actually stored in rolling bins, much like a laundry cart, believe it or not. So now what we have here is the ability to make more bins. So if I go to my Capture Scratch folder here, and I click on the folder icon, you see it adds another one, and I can call this Interview. And I can easily drag that in, and it moves into that bin for organization. If I need another folder down here or bin, I'll click and say Sync Sound. And this is for the external recorded audio, and I can drag that in. You can continue to use a series of folders or bins and continue to nest them as you deem fit. But doing this makes it a lot easier to keep the project organized. All right, let's go on to our next section. Because I want the project to be precisely organized, I've given you a snapshot project so that all of the folders or bins and clips have the same names. Throughout much of this course, I will have you open up a snapshot project at the start of each lesson. This will make it easier for you to follow along. I still want you to do all of the steps that you feel comfortable with, but these snapshot projects will ensure that we are looking at the exact same thing, because with a video edit, a little choice here or a change there, and it starts to look a little bit different. As such, go to the File menu and choose Open Project. Navigate to your hard drive and open up the exercise file folder. Navigating to Folder 2 Project Files and going into Folder 3 for setting up. I want you to open up the project called Syncing Clips and click Open. You can choose your other project and choose Close Project. Generally speaking, I recommend only keeping one project open at a time until you become more experienced with the program. This will let you be not easily confused by having too many options or different sources of media. In here, you'll see that I have the organized folders like you learned about. We've got our individual folder here for the multi-camera. We've got our interview and all of the related pieces. What I want to do now is synchronize two of these pieces together. Now, this project is set to the standard editing interface. If you want to change, you can do so by just clicking on Workspaces. What we're going to do here is go to the Interviews folder and open this up. In this case, we recorded the audio separately. The audio for our interview was recorded to a standalone audio recorder like a Zoom H4n. There are a lot of different standalone audio recorders out there, and many people choose to do this when working with DSLR cameras because they lack dedicated audio inputs that work with a lot of professional microphones. If we go to the Audio Sources folder, you'll see that there's the interview. And if I open that up, you can see all of the channels. The interviewer is on channel 1 and 3, and Jason is on channels 2 and 4. Let's listen.
And I thrive off of being in front of audiences and playing a lot of shows. I played 300 shows last year, so.
Much cleaner. Now what we can do is select both of those clips. And with a right click, choose Merge Clips. This allows us to synchronize these. I'll let this take on the new default name and tell it to sync based on the audio, looking at channel 1 on the original source. I'll also tell it to remove the audio from the original clip and replace it with the new audio. When I click OK, the clip is analyzed and both of them are compared for sound. The new sound is going to be automatically lined up and the old sound is removed, plus a new clip is created inside of our project. Let's give this just a second. There it is, and what I'll do is drag that into the appropriate bin, and let's expand this here so you can see a bit better, and double click. Don't be surprised if the clips are a different duration. If there's black at the front or back, and that's just because there was audio but no video. But if we go a little further in here and play the clip, it sounds and looks perfect.
Is also a huge part of it for me, and I love that aspect too, but I can't imagine myself being a musician with that.
As you see, such higher quality. All right, that's looking really good. Let's go ahead and move on to the next stage. One of the first things you'll need to build in your project after you've brought in media is a sequence. A sequence is effectively the canvas where you build the project out. We can add clips, audio, sound effects, and graphics to a sequence, and this is what ultimately creates the final video. Creating a sequence is pretty straightforward. I'll show you two different techniques. Please close the project you're currently working with, and don't bother saving changes. Now, choose File, Open Project, and open up Project 3.5, creating a sequence. Let's switch to the assembly workspace for a moment, and I'll go into my video sources here and take a look at my interview. If we scroll through, we can see information about the clip. For example, I see its dimensions are 1920 by 1080. Additionally, if we take a look, I can see the frame rate. So, I can simply now choose File, New, Sequence. And from the presets list, find the relative one that matches, such as Digital SLR, 1080p, 24 frames per second. You'll notice that it's been shortened to the friendlier 24 frames per second, but the actual frame rate is 23.976. If we give this a name, such as Rough Cut, and click OK, you'll see the sequence is automatically added to the selected bin. Let's drag that up to Sequences. Additionally, you can select an item in a bin and right-click and choose to create a new sequence from Clip. This will automatically add it to a new sequence, like this. Or, if you decide, you can just drag that item onto the new item at the bottom of the panel, and you'll see a sequence is made. Let's go ahead and delete those for a moment. And you see we have our new sequence currently stored in the Sequences bin. Okay, now that we've got a sequence, we're ready to go on to our next stage. As you work in Premiere Pro, the project files are pretty small when it comes to storage, but they're critically important. Every decision you make, from an edit to a sequence setting to an actual file that you create, such as a title graphic, is stored in that project. So losing your project can mean a lot of wasted time. Fortunately, Premiere Pro makes it easy to back up your work. What you'll want to do is go under the Premiere Pro menu and choose Preferences and select the choice here for Autosave. A new dialog box opens. You can now choose a new interval to save the project. If it says every 30 minutes, this means once every half hour, Premiere Pro will save your work without you doing anything. It'll automatically trigger the save. You can of course hit File Save or Command or Control S anytime you want. That's a little too infrequent for me. I prefer every 5 minutes. The maximum version numbers are how many copies are saved in case you need to go back in time. If I bump that up to 60, I have about 300 minutes or 5 hours of work automatically backed up. This means that if I make a bad choice or accidentally delete something, I can go back in time almost half a day. I also suggest you check these next two boxes. Save backup project to Creative Cloud. Included in your Creative Cloud membership is some cloud storage. This way, when you save the project, it'll automatically take a snapshot and store that in the cloud at Creative Cloud. In case your hard drive fails, you can always recover the project file and start working again. Now, I'm a big fan of once you've set up your media on your drive, making a second copy to another hard drive in case something goes wrong. After all, hard drives get lost, they could fall off of a desk, they could break, something can get corrupted, and you don't want to lose all that media. So having at least 2 copies of your media is a good idea. But equally damaging, and perhaps even more frustrating, is losing the project file, where days worth of work can go poof. So by setting that to Creative Cloud, you have an additional backup that's not stored on your media drive. The other choice here is if you want to automatically save the current project and not just a version. So this will overwrite the current project with the new settings versus just making a snapshot. It's ultimately up to you which setting you choose, but this is a great way for another level of redundancy. My suggestion is check both of these boxes for safety so that you're getting frequent backups, and click OK. All right, let's move on to our next stage.